Hi, guys. So today our group, The Destroyers, will be presenting on the book Give and Take, Discovering Your Reciprocity Style and How to Utilize That in the Workplace. It will be me presenting, Hannah, Raina, Dasha, and MJ. So the way that we're going to set up today's presentation is first, everybody's going to complete Adam Grant's Give and Take quiz to discover what reciprocity style they have before we learn about all the reciprocity styles. Then we're going to analyze what is a matcher, giver, and taker. Then we'll be going over a couple pros and cons along with that. And then we're going to debunk some stereotypes of each style and then establish ways for you to navigate your style in the workplace or see which styles might adapt best in certain work environments. Then we'll end with a quiz. Okay, so to start out with our beginning quiz, we are going to be taking Adam Grant's reciprocity style quiz. And if you scan this QR code, that will take you right to it. If the QR code is not working for you in the PowerPoint that you should have access to, the quiz time is hyperlinked to the quiz. So we'll give you guys 15 minutes to do that now. Okay, so now that everybody's taken the quiz, and has kind of learned a little bit more about what their reciprocity style is, we're gonna go a little bit more into detail about what is a taker, what is a giver, and what is a matcher. So we'll start out with takers. So takers feel that to succeed, they need to be better than others. And to prove their competence, they self-promote and make sure they're getting plenty of credit for their efforts. Oftentimes takers take more than they give, and they normally put their interests above the interests of others that they're working with. Oftentimes, takers just see situations as a zero sum pie, and they're looking to see how they can get the most of the pie, how they can just reap the most benefits out of everybody in the situation. So moving on to matchers, matchers operate on a principle of fairness. So they help others, but to protect themselves, they seek reciprocity for helping others. They always maintain a balance between how much they take and how much they give. So if you're thinking about it like a scale, like this or that, oftentimes matchers are always right here. While givers look like this and takers look like this, they're a little bit more uneven. Um, and so matchers relationships are built off an exchange of favors. So it's kind of on a basis of, hey, I did this for you. So now you owe me something in return. Or like you did something for me, I'm going to do something for you in return. And then the last reciprocity style is a giver. Givers strive to be generous in sharing their time, energy, knowledge, and skills, their ideas, and connecting with other people who can benefit from them. And that is probably the biggest difference between the giver and the other two reciprocity styles. They're always looking to see who they can benefit instead of how they can benefit from others. Additionally, givers focus on the needs of others and are always looking for ways to help. They're often seen as very selfless people, just always looking at situations from a lens of what they can do instead of how they can take something.
So next, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of being a giver, taker, and matcher. So starting with a giver, they occupy the highest levels of the organization. This is what you're supposed to strive towards, and being a giver is actually the best in each work field. So they've found. They also are highly valued because they're willing to do any type of work. Givers are willing to do this type of manual labor work or really just any type of work because they're wanting to make the lives of the people who they're around that much easier. They'll also receive support from fellow colleagues because when givers win, it feels like everybody wins. So it's like that positive attitude is contagious. A couple of cons of being a giver is that they occupy the lowest level of organization as well, because sometimes when you give and you don't receive, it can knock you down. They also may have a negative impact on their time management because they say yes to everybody. They're willing to do everything for everybody else, that at times they struggle. So, up next is a matcher. The biggest pro of being a matcher is that they believe that by being helpful, they're going to build this big network of people who are willing to help them in the future. This can kind of be offset in a way because at times they're almost less likely to form those deep and lasting relationships, mainly because when they're always expecting something in return, it could limit their ability to make those deep and meaningful relationships. They're not doing things out of the kindness at their heart, they're doing it because they're expecting something in return. They also tend to be less likely to be viewed as trustworthy and reliable by others because they tend to be very self motivated. And lastly, a big pro of being a taker is that the more that they give, they tilt that reciprocity style in their favor so that they move up faster. So it's almost like you're climbing this ladder and you can knock everybody else down as you're going up, but you're still going up and you're still increasing as much as you possibly can, and you're tilting everything in your favor. But a big con with being a taker is when they win, it's normally at the expense of somebody else. So it has that zero sum pie where it's like somebody else is losing even though they're gaining. And lastly, takers tend to be self-focused and strategically only help when the benefits outweigh the cost.
Now that we have learned a little bit about the pros and cons of each of the reciprocity styles, we're going to watch this short video that's called Can You Be Too Nice at the Office?
Everybody moving over this way, just a hair, too much. There it is, getting closer, coming closer to him. No, I mean, move your body in closer. There we go.
What's up, my man?
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Pick you up a little coffee.
Oh, thank you.
It's easy. It's just in the other room.
Appreciate it.
Something I like to do for my fellow man.
Thanks.
Yeah. Drink it at your leisure.
How about a 2 martini lunch? Tonight, on me. I'll pay for the whole thing. No big deal.
2 martini lunch. You're just gonna buy it for me.
Yeah, why wouldn't I?
It's great.
That's what I like to do for my fellow man.
Thank you. Don't know if you heard, but I got a promotion coming my way.
Did you know?
Yeah.
Did you?
yeah.
Congratulations.
Deserve it. But I think you do. And you know what? I'm gonna recommend that you get that promotion because that's the kind of guy that I am.
You know what? With that promotion, I think it's about time that I facilitate a hostile takeover in another company. In which case, I think it'd really be great if you were the CEO. I'll just be a senior VP. You can be in charge. I want that for you.
A lot of power. Yeah. Because with that power, I have no choice but to sign the company jet over to you, my friend. That's right. A plane of your own to go anywhere you would like. That's what I do for you.
Thanks. Can't wait to use that plane.
Yes.
To take you to the island of your choice for a vacation, since I plan on acquiring the entire Lesser Antilles. Take your pick. St. Kitts, St. Thomas, whatever island you want. I want that to happen for you.
The Lesser Antilles.
Yeah.
I'll just have to pick up the Greater Antilles, where I'll take you. You know, any island of your choice. And my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the coffee.
Yeah.
Or I'm gonna get you a venti, which is 2 sizes bigger than this one. Twice as generous.
Well, next day I'll get you a Guarani.
Oh, will you?
Yeah, it's a 40 ounce.
And then the next day I'll get you a ciento.
You can get here on Friday. I'll have picked you up on Google Plex here.
Oh, good. Because on next Monday, I'm gonna buy you an Infinitilla.
Now, while this was a comedic video, we do encourage everyone to strive to be a giver. It has been shown that being a giver can help you come out on top, and that givers are at the top and the bottom of the success ladder. Now we're going to try and cover some stereotypes or debunk some of those stereotypes. When it comes to only having 3 reciprocity styles, it can be hard to fit everyone into just 3 categories. So that's why when you take the test, you may have a certain percentage of all 3 types. So then it's hard to try and stereotype one specific type because you could have a combination of all of them. So we'll start with the first stereotype that givers are doormats. But that's simply not true. Givers ultimately gain even though they spend a lot of time giving, because oftentimes when you develop that relationship with others, you will gain things in return. They're often top of the network chain. They're very successful in group work, and people want to come back to work with them, and they're trusted by people and with important work tasks. So while people may assume that givers just give and then they get run over, a lot of times they gain a certain level of respect because they are givers and people recognize their willingness to sacrifice for the greater good, or just to sacrifice to kind of strengthen a particular relationship. They do often gain just as much as they give, and sometimes even more. The next stereotype is that all takers are selfish. So one can be a taker but still have interest in the success of a group. Like I was saying earlier, most people are a percentage of the different types. The percentage of other types can balance out the self-interest of a taker. So you may have some qualities of a taker, but then you may also have a decent percentage of a giver or a matcher. And not this is not to say also that, if you're 100% taker that you are selfish, because it's not always a bad idea to look out for yourself in a work setting. I know in this day and age that we are in, it's kind of like how self-care is being highly promoted, and people who are taking an interest in self-care are not just being deemed as selfish. And so it's kind of similar in the workplace. Sometimes you have to take opportunities for yourself, and sometimes you have to put yourself first in order to get where you need to be going in your career, and also to look out for yourself and to prevent being a doormat for the people that you work with or the people that you work for. And next, matchers are okay with never advancing over others. A lot of people assume that matchers, they just want to stay on one level. They want to be as good as the next person and never better, but matchers don't always match. And one thing to recognize is that sometimes matchers just match to avoid conflict. So if you don't want to go to your boss and assert that you feel that you deserve a better promotion or you deserve a higher lead on a project, sometimes to avoid that conflict, you may just take what the rest of the group is given, even if you feel like you're more qualified. Um, so it's not safe to assume that matchers are okay with never wanting to advance. But then also going back to the point that I've made several times, that you can be a mix of all the reciprocity styles. And just because matcher is your leader, that can mean so many other things rather than just the fact that you're okay with staying stagnant in the workplace.
So, in Give and Take, the author Adam Grant gives a series of different stories as examples, kind of breaking down givers and takers and matchers. And so, we chose three stories to go over with you guys that kind of express some of the points that Adam Grant makes throughout his book. And the first person that we're going to talk about is George Meyer. And Meyer is a great example of how givers can be just as successful as takers. So Meyer may or may not be someone that you recognize, whose name you've heard before, but he's actually become a well-established person within show business. Meyer has worked on a movie that has grossed over $527 million, written for multiple late-night talk shows, and is considered the mastermind behind The Simpsons, even though he's not the creator. So how did Meyer reach success as a giver? Meyer constantly worked as a team player, recognizing that groups worked better when they went through a collaborative process instead of an individual process. And this happened whether he was working on The Simpsons or on shows like David Letterman. He also made himself available to coworkers to help workshop ideas that they came up with and to work on scripts that might not have been the most exciting to other writers. Another thing Meyer did was he didn't keep track of exactly what were his ideas and contributions to projects, so that way only he would get the credit, but instead let that be something that his team could build upon and expand, and everyone would get credit for. So the next story was on David Hornick. David was a successful business investor, but he became too much of a giver. And backstory for him is he became friends with a man named Danny Shader, who was a successful entrepreneur who sold his first startup for $175 million and his second one for $500 million. One day, Shader approached Hornick about pitching a new idea, and so Hornick was very excited because he knew how successful Shader's ideas typically were. Hornick listened to Shader's pitch and immediately brought him to his partners before offering him a competitive term sheet, which is basically the contract for investing in Shader's new idea. But how exactly did this make Hornick too much of a giver? Hornick knew Shader's idea would receive a lot of offers from other investors, but instead of offering Shader what is called an explosive deal or a timed offer, meaning that after a certain date, the offer would expire. Harnick let Shader have time to shop around. He gave him time to talk to other investors, other companies, hear other offers, that kind of thing. Hornick gave Shader a list of references and hoped Shader would decide to take his offer thanks to Hornick's generosity and reputation. Hornick had a long list of customers and people he'd worked with that could verify how great of a business relationship that Hornick develops with people he's working with. And so Hornick relied a lot on the word of others and this contract to inspire Shader to take his deal. Ultimately, Shader decided to go with another investor, even though Hornick's offer was just as good. The reason? Hornick was too nice and wouldn't challenge Shader. Shader even called Hornick up and said, "My heart said to go with you, but my head said to go with the other investor, and I chose to go with my head." And the last story is about Kenneth Lay. Kenneth Lay is what is known as a faker. This is a taker in disguise as a giver. So Lay came from a poor background. He worked to get a doctorate in economics and eventually had a career in the Navy. He then started a company where under his leadership, it became worth over $110 billion. Lay's company became known for being a great place to work, as well as for donating several $million to charity. But how does this make Lay a faker? Because that sounds like a giver to me. Well, Lay's company was the one and only Enron. Under Lay's leadership, Enron reported false profits and covered up over $1 billion in debt, which led to a loss in $1.2 billion in shareholder equity after a report of third quarter losses of $618 million. Lay also took advantage of his own company by misappropriating funds for personal use, funneling $4.5 million through his sister's travel company. Lay even sold over $70 million of his own stock when he realized his company was about to go down. Lay gave the appearance of being a giver by donating a lot of money to charity and helping a lot of his employees, making it known as a great place to work. But it was because he was taking so much from his company on this side and taking advantage of those relationships and connections that he had with other people.
So now we're going to jump into the application of giver, taker, and matcher personalities in the workplace. So givers do tend to lean towards more selfless positions, is what we've found, because it gives them the ability to help others succeed rather than focusing on themselves. So some common positions for a giver in jobs actually are in the healthcare industry, such as nurses and also volunteer hospital administration staff. Other giver jobs would include mentorship and ministry opportunities, where givers are able to pour into those around them for a lower salary than other people would usually make. And finally, givers are also known to start more nonprofits than takers and matchers are, because they care more about making a positive impact in their communities. So now, moving on to takers. Takers are known to go after the more dog-eat-dog positions, for lack of better words, in the corporate world. So these positions usually look like CEOs and CFOs, or people who work in sales. But they could also be corporate positions such as opportunities with quick advancement or higher end salaries as well. Takers are also known to love job positions in government and politics due to the constant strive to win against their competitors in debates and also be awarded with seats in higher positions. So next we have the matcher. And when it comes to the application of matchers in the workplace, they usually go after opportunities that are peer advised to some sort. So these positions are usually people who love writing, like authors, professors, and even filmmakers to an extent. They tend to love these positions because they're constantly able to give feedback on and advice on their peers' projects in order to get feedback and advice in return. So they're giving that advice in order to get it in return. So finally, yay, you've made it to the end of this presentation. First, make sure you congratulate yourself on making it to the end because it's a long one. But also second, we're providing you with a stress-free way to ensure that you have learned everything that you will need for the final exam. So now that you've gotten to this point, you can go ahead and scan this QR code on the screen. And it will take you to the final quiz. Make sure that you do pay attention to the last question on the quiz and you put in your top reciprocity style so that we are able to evaluate that. You'll have 10 to 15 minutes to take this, so feel free to leave this recording playing because there's time built in for this quiz. But if you do prefer to pause the recording, just skip 15 minutes ahead for our final regards. So go ahead and feel free to do that. So welcome back. I hope that was enough time for you to be able to take our final quiz. If not, you can take this as a moment to click the pause button and go ahead and finish that up. If you have any questions or comments to evaluate, please make sure you email them to me. My email address is mallory.smith@vikings.berry.edu. That is MALLORY.SMITH@vikings.berry.edu. And I'll make sure to share those with our group. Thank you so much for your time today, and we hope that you enjoyed learning about your reciprocity style and how to use it in the workplace.